Well, it's funny how after a full day's work designing magazine ads, Grace finds the time to decorate and redecorate.
I guess it's just the artist in me dying to get out. Andrew, you know that flirting with me is only going to make me wish I'd married you instead of Trip.
Okay, that's enough, you two lovebirds. Okay, Andrew, I think this evening is over. You've got to leave.
Okay, so that's just some guy, just playing with the game, and so based on whatever he said, the game automatically responded to. I mean, there's AI behind the characters. But what was missing over here? I mean, did you guys pick up? Typing, right? I mean, you're showing up at somebody's house, you're not going to be typing to ask him questions or, whatever. I guess some people might text, but still. What we want to do over here is that can you build an interface, a human interaction interface, where you don't have to use, text, you don't have to actually use mouse clicks, you don't have to use, a number of these constraints that a computer might impose. Can you just naturally interact with them as you would with any other person? Or how about assisting doctors and therapists? Some of you may have seen that on NPR recently. The motivation over there is that can you bring some sort of a virtual therapist for people like the elderly and the disabled? And this is not necessarily replacing a therapist, but providing some metrics that could be used by other therapists when they want to work more efficiently. And this is happening all closed loop. So the person's in front of the virtual therapist is picking up on their affective cues. They're smiling, or they're actually emphasizing certain parts of speech. Are they engaged or disengaged? That kind of stuff. And that is being used then to see how to move forward in the interaction. But I guess one of my favorite applications is, and that's the kind of work we've been doing at SRI, is can you provide some training tools for our men and women in law enforcement and the military, so they have the ability to acquire this basic human dynamic skills, so when they actually get deployed to a number of different encounters, be it a 19-year-old from rural Texas who's deployed in Benghazi, or is a law enforcement, a cop who just who lived his whole life in the Hamptons and now he's a cop in the Bronx. They can potentially be in very tricky situations. But if they don't get exposed to appropriate training beforehand, it's hard for them to get out of situations which might be dangerous. So this video is going to illustrate sort of the con-ups of what we're doing. We're not so much the AI behind the characters of the virtual world or the 3D graphics. We're the sensing people, right? So we're going to be actually picking up on facial expressions, body posture, speech, intonations, paralinguistics, speech to text. And what you see over here is that view. And this person is a ex-law enforcement person with a lot of experience, and we're going to put him in front of our simulation system and learn from him. What does he do? What does he bring from his experience to this encounter? By the way, this is a domestic violence sort of a scenario, so it has a bit of a crude language over there, but just bear with it, please.
Hey, did you hear that? Sounds like a mess, man. Be careful. Be careful. Okay. Uh-oh.
Sir, please come talk with you.
Come on over, sir. Come on over. Let me talk to you.
No, there's no trouble, man. We just arguing, she's a crazy bitch, I love her. We get loud from time to time. There's no trouble. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I understand. Sometimes you just got to take things in your own hands when our women just don't do what we tell them to do. Did you have to smack her to get you to cook something for you?
Like I told you, we don't have any trouble here. You don't want to get involved with this, boss, okay? It's just a family thing. It's just between me and my girl. I have a long day. I'm telling you, you need to go. This doesn't concern you.
Well, I understand what you're having to say to me, but it does concern me because safety is important to me. I need to see your girl. I need to see the lady and talk to her for a moment. Would you ask her to step outside, please?
Do you not fucking hear me? You need to leave, boss. I told you this is between me and her. Don't you have something better to do? Don't you have some real criminals to deal with? This is just a dispute, just like
Calm down.
I had a long day. You need to fucking leave.
Calm
Do you
down.
not understand English?
Calm
Leave,
down.
Holmes. You need to fucking leave.
Calm
What's
down.
the problem? You
Okay.
need to her? You need to talk to her?
Yeah, you can talk to her.
Hey, wait, give me that. Give me that. Give me that.
So this is stage or this is real?
No, this is staged. This is you didn't actually get to see the other side. What he was interacting with this, a projection on the screen. But this is the first time that he was actually exposed to this system, and I guess part of the training and experiences just get triggered when they're exposed to situations from their past. And I was there recording the situation, and even I felt that I was getting engaged into it. I could feel it in his tone of speech and his changing posture. Yeah, please.
So are these cues that the system seems to be tracking independent or interdependent? So, for example, a facial expression with one body language or one gesture could mean one thing, but with another type of gesture could mean a different thing. So does the model take that into account, or does it just look at them independently?
So that is the key to the talk, and there's a whole section dedicated to it. But let me just give you a little glimpse. We do look into the correlations. We do look at are there dependencies between affect that's projected from one modality, like facial expressions, posture, tone of speech. Do they reinforce each other or not? Absolutely, we do. All right, so hopefully I've motivated where we're coming from. So for the rest of the talk, let me just give you a little overview of what's going to be happening. I'm going to start talking about first who do we actually work with. The people that fund us, but really what sort of professions do we tap into? What sort of scientists that we work with? What are we building? How are we building it? I'm sure a lot of you guys are interested in that. How it's used, I'll show you some examples of how actually it gets used. And where do we go from here? What are the future directions that we're quite interested in exploring? So let's dive right into it. Now, we work with three sort of groups of people. First being the sociologists, ethnographers, subject matter experts. These are the people who are telling us that such and such behavior you should be looking for. These are the skills that you need to be training for. So this is not us. We're not the people qualified to make that assessment. So we work with a lot of sociologists, social psychologists, like you, Dr. Fior, and they're trying to work out what are those good stranger skills. Some people seem to have an uncanny ability to just possess them. But can you distill that information down to a point that you can then give it to computer scientists like us, that we can develop a training tool that other people can start picking up those skills? And that's where we come in. And then we also work with social psychologists to evaluate the efficacy of a training tool like this. Is it actually making a measurable impact? People who get trained through our system, when they get deployed overseas, are there any metrics that you can use to evaluate that there's been a difference? What we're building is, as I mentioned earlier, we call multimodal integrated behavior analytics, or MIBA for short. And the idea is that can you build a closed-loop system where people can interact in a fluid fashion as you would with other people in the real world, and that information is then used to drive the behaviors. And of course, there's a lot of work in the AI that goes behind the characters, the training narrative itself. And so it needs to work hand in hand. You sense what's happening, just like in a real world situation. Your eyes and ears are what we're trying to create. And so to the question, it is not that we want to look at each modality in isolation. If the person's projecting calmness in his voice, the facial expressions, he's smiling, and he's got a relaxed body posture. So naturally, you can get to a judgment that yes, the person is calm, but that's the best we can do. We cannot really actually look inside what's happening in the brain. So all of our sensing is standoff, at a distance. And we look at getting to that affective state and the cognitive state at multiple time granularities, both at time, moment-to-moment, blow-by-blow interactions, as well as over a time period. What did you do? What was the, what is the key messages that you can take for an after-action review that came from the interaction? So that's sort of the overview, and I think you must be dying for the technical details, right? So let me just go into some of those. Now, we look at a lot of different modalities, one of which is the full body affect or gestures or postures, interpreting body language. Right? So this is not speech, this is not even facial expressions, this is just like, okay, what are you projecting with your arm motions or your shoulders or your postures? And in fact, there's a lot of work out there that seems to suggest that in situations where your facial expressions and your body language are not in congruity, then it might be better for you to look into what is projected by the body posture, because people seem to be slightly better at masking their facial expressions than the rest of the body. So there's very interesting work over there that we're trying to tap into. We look at both static poses and the dynamics of it. So it's, at any time instant, what was the posture? And then over time periods, how did you actually move? Was the motion jerky or fast? And one of the research focuses has been, can you make this independent of different people, different sizes, anthropometry, their idiosyncrasies and so forth? And, Dr. Shah has done a lot of work in that. Now, the kind of elements that we're looking for in body language, these include specific gestures, greeting, pointing, beckoning, for example. There's thousands and thousands of them. We've only just scraped the surface over there. Head posture, bend backwards, is it forward, upright, and so forth. Arms, are they outstretched, raised? Shoulders, what can you understand about a person's state of mind by looking at shoulders being slumped or lifted? Torso, a lot of people in law enforcement will tell you that the relative orientation between your head pose and your torso tells you a lot. If you're in taut position, which is sort of the recommended position to be in, if you feel that you might be threatened, you're like this. And if you want to really relax everybody, you have a consistent head pose versus the torso. Leg stance, motions, jerky versus smooth, muscular tensions, and so forth. And how we get to that is we use an articulated human model to track 15 joint locations using the Microsoft Kinect. Some of you may have already used that. So the Kinect we use a lot for research purposes. So the skeleton sort of looks like this. So for a particular person, you have 15 joint locations. We pick one of them, the neck in this case, to use as a reference, and then everything else is with respect to that. The kind of features that we look into is relative orientations, relative distances, relative velocities, and so forth. And all of that is then concatenated over time to get you sort of a 2D representation of what a person might be doing. To get to individual gestures, quite early on we realized that if you end up using the whole skeleton at the same time to classify a particular gesture, I'm just assuming a little bit basic understanding of machine learning, what a classifier is. There is a tendency that subtle motions and variations of gestures are drowned out. If I'm interested in a waving gesture, what really is important is the motion in the upper torso, particularly my arm. And so if I'm using everything, all the information from the remaining joints, then it's hard for the classifier to learn the fact that, hey, the important motion really lies in just one part of the body. So what developed is an approach similar to what you see in a CVPR publication. And the idea is to subdivide the skeleton into subsets, and each subset is associated with how significantly it can predetermine a gesture. And so what we call them is gesturelets. And in addition, I'll talk about the temporal structure representation also. But real quickly, this is, overwhelming amount of text over here. But what I'm really trying to say over here is that we do a data mining step first. So we take all the skeleton joints for all the gestures, end-to-end comparison, and pick out specific subsets to say which correlate most with certain gestures. That is our data mining step, which tells us this is sort of our exemplar set. And then we train classifiers to say, okay, what conjunctions of these most discriminately identify a certain gesture.
So this gesture let is a part of a gesture, or what is?
So the gesture let is, think of it as a subset of the entire skeleton's motion. So if I'm actually doing this, so this particular motion, this right motion of these two joints over here could be one gesture let. So think of it as an atomic representation that you can use to piece together a whole gesture.
So you don't look at all the points on the skeleton, but just part of it.
That's right.
And why do you do that? Like, because you want to look at, say, arm, left arm or right arm gesture or so on?
Not so much. Well, we really want to get to that level of fidelity, right? But the problem is that when you start using the entire skeleton, all the skeleton joints seem to get, the classifier doesn't know which skeleton joints need to be focused more or given more confidence or weight as opposed to others. So there are many examples where, hand waving like this, and you got this gesture like this, and will be confused simply because only two joints really exhibited motion. The rest of the 13 joints did not. So what the classifier is learning really is trying to learn that little bit of distinction between the two. So we're just trying to help it guide it towards which parts have more information. But that's a great point.
So your feature vector remains the same, but you put more weights to certain subset of those joints.
Yeah, the feature vector just is the same. It's actually what we use to figure out, okay, this when I say a subset of joints, it basically means getting the same feature vector, the relative velocities over time for that subset of joints.
So from the gesture-led discovery, is that automatic or is it annotation-based, or are you doing like multiple instances?
No, it's think of it as data mine. So you pick up lots of subsets, so potentially, and so like a greedy approach after that, yeah. And the other thing that we bring in is getting to variations in speed of execution. So, coming back to the waving example, this is a wave, and so is this, right? But a classifier that's being trained just for this may actually have a difficult time adapting to smaller time window of a faster gesture. So what we do is similar to the pyramid representation that you see in traditional computer vision, but essentially think of each gesture being divided up in sort of a temporal pyramids. So you extract features from this entire thing, do a Fourier transform to get to the frequency domain, divide it up into two subsets, do the same thing. So you have two set of features, and you keep on going along, dividing it to whatever granularity that you're interested in. And the final feature is, in fact, a concatenation of all those features at all different time granularities.
So what are these features? This histogram is what? Like the first level, this one?
All right, so think of it as, well, this is actually finally the Fourier transform of that. So this is not exactly related with what we're extracting over there. But over here, what we're doing is that there are two things. One is for each joint, the relative distances and relative velocities, as well as a little cuboid around it. So we're looking at a little bit of the occupancy grade around it. And
so this is a time, and then you get some value, say a scalar value or something?
yeah, in this case, this is just the frequencies. You just do a Fourier transform of the, yeah.
So what the blue and red means then? Blue bar and red bar, what's the difference?
I think it's different, just different joints, but just for illustration.
So
yeah, but
are you looking at like a trajectory of a joint and looking Fourier transform of that, or you're looking at a more spatial configuration of joints? And like what's the?
It's both. It's both. Yeah. So if I go back over here, so the pairwise distances between each pair of joints, pairwise velocities. One thing that this does not mention over here is also the cuboids. Sort of the occupancies.
Right. And these are the features in the Kinect input. using only depth, no RGB.
No RGB. Yeah.
So the cuboid you said was the occupancy that's like from the depth data, or?
That's right. Yeah. And actually, that's one of the reasons I didn't want to go into details of that was because with the Kinect, you don't necessarily get full depth. It's sort of just you don't know what's happening. You don't have full 3D information. It's just a surface distance, right? So the kind of training, this is just a small portion of the actions that we train on. These are motivated by the particular scenario that we were interested in, a checkpoint scenario. I'll show some videos of that later on. So a bunch of different actions that we collected data sets for, and we'll be making some of that stuff public as our publication comes through. And confusion matrices you guys are familiar with. So each particular gesture over here, basically what you want to look for is high values close to 1 along the diagonal. Smaller values basically mean that a particular gesture is being confused by with others. Now, what it ends up looking like is once we integrate it into our system is this. So this person is doing different gestures. The first with the bow. Then when a specific gesture is recognized, the bar for it basically rises and turns red.
So in this, are you also using a facial thing or just a skeleton?
This one is just, the gesture is just based on the skeleton, but one of my topics later down is going to be about the facial expressions. All right, so I'm going to start skipping a few videos because I think I'm a little behind. But this I'll show. So this video we're looking at sort of an orthogonal view to gestures where we're getting to a holistic understanding of the body affect. So this graph over here, the red one, is trying to pick up what is your state of arousal, how animated you are. So we're looking at all the skeleton joints in this case to pick that up. All right, so that's just full body postures and gestures. But the Kinect, just, Raksha, you asked about, is RGB being used? It's inherently limiting our analysis because it's just giving you 15 joint locations. It's not telling you, what is beyond the wrist. You don't know what's happening in the hand, and the hand is a source of a lot of communication between people. So we want to get to what we call diactic or iconic gestures, pointing, using thumbs and fingers to communicate. And then, the motivation is that in different cultures, what you do with your hands can mean a lot as far as, are you communicating well? Are you offending somebody or not? So, open palm fist, open palm seems to be, a common, almost universal gesture of, openness, as opposed to the back of the palm, which might be construed as offensive in certain cultures. So what we do is we've rigged up a high-res camera with the Kinect, and we calibrate the two. So what we can go from the Kinect to a particular part in the high-res camera and pick up enough pixels to do the sort of analysis that we want to do for hand poses. We created a data set for 9 different hand poses to start from, closed fists, open palms, pointing, thumbs down, relaxed hand, and so forth. And the approach over here, I'll just show you, the high-level picture. There are a couple of proprietary things that I wasn't able to get through for this talk. But in a sense, you can think of it as first extracting the hand position, a depth mask from the Kinect data, projecting it into the RGB image so we have a good segmentation out. Then we take the RGB image for, gradients, edges, and so forth. And, the simplest solution could be that you generate lots of features like a histogram of gradients and train a classifier. Our approach is similar to that, and you end up with something like this. So I don't know if you noticed, this is an open hand, so it's not pointing. So this gesture is pointing. So let me play that again. So it's picking up not just the fact that you have your hand outstretched, but also whether it's pointing or open.
So is this real time?
This is all real time, yeah. And in fact, I brought the whole demo system with me, and later today, if people are interested, in Dr. Shah's lab, I'll be demoing that. All right, now to facial expressions. So, complementary modality to explore. Are people, happy, surprised? Are they frowning? What sort of affect is being projected with the facial expression? I mean, that's the holy grail. And we've looked at a number of different approaches over here, starting from low-level facial feature extraction, fiducial marks on the face, mid-level representations like the Ackman's action units, to try to get to a sense of what sort of cognitive state you might be in. But the state-of-the-art work, we've implemented, we've tried, and we've tinkered with it. It fails. I mean, it's great with your training data sets, public data sets, the Konkanade and all. Everybody's beaten it to death. But in real-world interactions, it does miserably because it is not the exaggerated expressions that you're interested in. You're talking about subtle variations and the dynamics of movement from one expression to another. That's the key. Now, so our intuition has been lately that we should try and model the temporal dynamics of that. And one idea is to divide the lifespan of a particular facial expression into 3 phases: an onset, an increasing phase, and an apex or a peak phase. And then you can try and learn not only classifiers for individual phases, but also the temporal variations between the 3. The particular graphical model that we use for that is a conditional random field. I'll just give you a quick overview over here, but later on in the slides I'll get into some more details. What we're trying to get to is that, okay, not just an instantaneous snapshot classifier. So we want to take a temporal signal, multiple time instances, so evidence from multiple time instances, and jointly figure out the labels for all the states. So if it's 15 frames or 30 frames or maybe more, jointly understand what should be the class label for all of them, given conditionally all the evidence thus far. And so this might be an illustrative video over here. So what you should look for are these 3 different class labels: the neutral, increasing, and the apex, and how they actually, the dynamics of that. And people working in this area are familiar with the data set. It's the Konkanade data set.
So these are 3 different phases.
Exactly right.
And so what, is recognizing this?
Yeah. So, and these are 3 classifiers running simultaneously. And, this is what we want to get to. Not just, hey, I just picked up smile over here. No. There are gradations that we want to get to. And, our results are pretty much state-of-the-art, even with an approach like this. But and I think that's because the data sets themselves don't,
You go back, so what precisely is it decomposing to determine what part is the neutral, what part is the increasing, what part is the apex? Is it some kind of holistic combination of the facial cues? So I'm just trying to understand what it's looking at.
What it's looking at are approximately 63, 62 different fiducial marks on the face, which are not actually, which are being tracked automatically from the RGB that we're getting. So we use an AM model. So it's a 3D basically mesh model which is being used to track facial landmarks like your eyebrows, your nose, your lips, different features on your cheeks. So these are 3D points accumulated over time. And the classifiers look for the gradients from a set reference point or neutral position. So the more you see a delta, suppose if I'm smiling, how much the landmarks on the lips move back and forth. So it's only anything that we can track visually. So yeah, we don't have any other means of getting to.
So you have identified that what is the neutral phase and what is fixed and increasing?
Exactly right. Yeah, so from the training data itself. So this is the cone canal data set that we use for training.
But I mean, you are using a 2D in the RGB. It's not a 3D input, right?
It's 2D, but we try using, active apparatus model, yeah.
Okay.
And we can do more. We can get to gaze as well. So, that AM model, it's a nice 3D mesh. We can pick out pupils, or at least attempt to do that. And I think we're getting there. We're picking up gaze of a person in real time. It's not as precise as what you can get from an IR solution, commercial solutions, but our motivation is that completely hands-off. We don't want to have any special purpose hardware, anything that's just off the shelf like cameras. So with gaze, currently we can figure out fidelity to the level of what quadrant of the screen that you're interacting with are you looking at.
Is this a real lady or is this some type of avatar?
This is a real man.
So what are the two different the different colors represent? Red, green.
So not only are we tracking gaze, we're also trying to get to a level of what sort of behavior a person is showing with the gaze. So staring intensely is red, normal gaze green, surveying the screen blue.
So gaze duration is kind of easy to understand, but how do you quantify the staring intensity?
You can quantify by looking at, how steady your gaze is, how much is it actually,
How much you change?
how much you're changing, yeah. It's a very simple measure over here. Many times it's those low-hanging fruits over there that are really needed to get to even an estimate of, are you projecting nervousness or attentiveness? I mean, what is attentiveness? Unless, if you're not making eye contact, obviously, you might be thinking about something else, but we don't know what you're thinking. We can only estimate what is observable. So that's part of our system too. And so what you see over here, it might be difficult to notice, but there are green sort of lines sticking out from the eye, and it's telling us where the person's looking.
So in this one right now, you're just looking at the face, or you're looking at both the skeleton and the face?
Okay, so we are looking at both because the way we get this face crop is we take the skeleton position for the head, project it into the RGB camera, the high-res camera, pick up the right crop from it, and that's what fed into the facial expression analysis and the gaze tracking. You'll see in the demo, it gives you a pan-tilt sort of a PTZ camera feel, but the camera's static. You're just moving around in the field.
So the facial expression, you are not trying to recognize from the depth?
No.
It's not that enough.
It's really not the case, yeah. I'm hoping with the new Kinect that will change.
Would it be possible to detect joint attention? So imagine it's not just one person but two people, and you want to identify the degree to which they are both looking at the same thing.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, so would it be possible? I think in the current system it is possible to do that. I mean, the concept has been that there's one person interacting with the screen, but we are actually starting to look into multiple people interactions. Are they looking at the same part of the world? For instance, how are they communicating with each other as they interact with the virtual world? So, yeah, that's something that we've started to look into.
So in these videos, you always have this curtain. So
No, forget about this. This is the same lab being used by a number of different programs, and the curtain is for something that the curtain has no impact. No, as you will see in your lab. All right. So the last modality that I'd like to spend a few minutes on is paralinguistics, tone of speech, your intonations, your emphasis on certain words. And it's an incredibly hard problem. When I first started working on it, I thought, it's speech signal. It's inherently 1D as opposed to 2D imagery or video. It should be easier to tackle, but now it's actually very difficult. To motivate that, let me show you some examples.
Sorry about it, but I'll ask for my social. I don't know by heart. I don't want to give you the wrong numbers.
Okay, so that's somebody being a little bit...
So is it on the phone or
sometimes it's phone. Think of these as 911 calls. But this is part of a data set I'll briefly talk.
No, I don't. Oh, bullshit! You are
Yeah, some of this police. Okay, so you guys like cops, right? So.
Oh my goodness! Oh, fucking goodness! What the fuck? Oh, I can't believe this shit!
All right, so is the person really agitated? Was she excited? It sometimes it's difficult for even me. I mean, you got to bring in the context, right? You got to bring in video, what her facial expressions are. So that's something I'll talk about. So it's a challenging problem, and there are lots of data sets out there. We've tried those, and we decided that we need to capture some of our own. And so we've been working with a lot of people from law enforcement to do that. The approach is, in a sense, similar flavor that we've seen in some of the past pieces that I showed you. You extract a bunch of features, MFCs. I mean, obviously the features are different. It's a different modality. So we're looking at MFCCs, pitch energy, zero crossings, and so forth. There's a lot of use, at least in the audio domain, to put transforms on that. Dimensionality reduction is something that we do similarly in computer vision as well. And then you train models, GMMs, SVMs, and so forth. Which one? This is a library, and it's got a bunch of different features in it that we use. So we've just scraped the surface over there. We found that we're not able to currently differentiate between neutral and, for instance, authoritative versus agitated versus slightly agitated versus indignant. That's just way too challenging. But we can do a pretty decent job at are you agitated versus calm. And that's what you'll see in the confusion matrix also. However, still, there are misclassifications nonetheless. So this is something that's misclassified as agitated, even though it's calm speech. But I think this might be a better illustrative video. So this fellow over here is the closest we've got in New Jersey in our lab, to the Sopranos. So his his baseline is a little bit high, anyways. Keep a track of this green graph over here. So the higher it gets, it's a measure of how agitated you are in your tone of speech.
I'm looking for my daughter. Can you help me? I'm looking for my daughter. Can you help me?
And so that was, picked up over there nicely. All right, so I guess, I should now come to the final topic, which is multimodal affect estimation. We've been asked, how do you look into correlations and dependencies between one modality and the other? Calm voice, facial expression of smiling, relaxed body, how does that tell you about the overall demeanor? Now, this itself is actually, a great new field that it's getting pretty exciting out there. Some recent work, particularly the AVEC 2011 dataset, is something that I would encourage students who are interested in this area to look into. One of the publicly available datasets. What they've done is that they have collected lots of audio-video data of people interacting with others, and they've given it binary labels. Activation, so these are different affective or cognitive labels. Activation as in how aroused you are. Expectation, power, which plays into concepts of control. Valence, do you have a negative or a positive emotion? So we take the data set, and first of all, we try to extract features from that, similar to the work that I was talking about earlier in the paralinguistic section. One key thing that we just mix in over here is dimensionality reduction, which is different from, say, PCA sort of work. We do partial least squares, and the idea over there is that you don't want to lose a lot of the key data when you do subspace, project to a lower dimensional subspace. So what PLS allows you to do is to, it's sort of label aware or class label aware when it's doing the subspace reduction. And it's trying to find the subspace that maximizes the differences in individual classes also. So we can do SVMs on that, but the idea is that we want to use CRFs. We want to model the temporal variations of the data. And essentially, the CRFs feed into, the SVMs feed into the CRF. So the audio features or the visual features, they pass through an SVM, and the likelihoods that we get from over there are actually then used at the CRF level. To see how it ends up, now this is sort of some data for whatever signal. The blue is the ground truth, so that's telling you when the data is actually corresponding to the particular affect. Green is all the likelihoods that we're getting from the SVM directly, and the red is the CRF results. It's nicely smoothed out, the results, so that's what we're trying to capture. It's not just an instantaneous snapshot, but it's looking at the variation of data over time. Then, standard literature will tell you that you can extend CRFs to have HCRFs or hidden state CRFs, which are very important in stuff like when you get to an abstract notion of affect in audio or speech. So these hidden states act as an intermediate representation between the raw features and the actual high-level labels. And so we were able to evaluate the impact of all of those components. So if you compare raw SVM versus PLS SVM, the mean precision improves. Then you compare PLS SVM versus PLS CRF. So the CRF adds onto that. And then HCRF adds further onto that.
So this plot you are showing, can you go back?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the time it's showing you probability of particular event, emotion happening? Or something?
That's right. So say one of the affects is arousal. So you have a lot of training data set that you've trained your classifier on. And the green dots are just the direct SVM outputs of all the features being fed into the classifier. The blue is the ground truth, and the red one is what you get when you apply a CRF on that.
So it's kind of smooth and integrated.
Yeah. All right. So, but that's just one modality, right? The audio stream. The question is, what happens when you start bringing in video as well? You can, do the same process of feature extraction, training of classifier, and so forth. But then, how do you bring them together? A couple of approaches out there are what's sometimes termed as early fusion. So you take audio-video features. You can do some sort of arbitration logic between them, like concatenating the features, some weighted fusion at the very low-level feature level, and then train a simple CRF on that. All right. So what the CRF is learning is data sort of which is both audio and visual features, and it will hopefully learn, maybe the way you have combined the features will help you do fusion. But perhaps a bit more popular approach is what's called late fusion. So you have two simultaneous CRFs running, and then there's another added layer which combines the outputs of the label nodes from individual CRFs. So one was dedicated to the audio features, the other is to the video. But what we've done, and this is going to be coming out later in the summer at ICME, is what we call joint hidden CRFs. And essentially, the idea is to take the features from two different modalities and jointly learn the parameters for the entire CRF. So there's only one label layer. And we've demonstrated that it does actually improve upon not only individual modalities, be it SVMs or HCRFs. So, these are individual modalities you've trained classifiers on. And this is a HCRF, so we have an improved performance, as well as both early fusion and late fusion. we outperformed that. And that's sort of the best, reported results on the AVEC 2011 data set that's out there, and it's going to be coming out.
So who put together that data set?
It's a joint consortium of researchers. I don't think it's any particular university.
How do you model the potentials between the nodes for those CRF?
So let's see if I have some details on that. So particularly in the JHCRF, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get to the potential functions of both the states, both the hidden states from one modality over here, the other over here, as well as the transition functions between the labels and from the features to the hidden states. So it's a combination of that, and I would certainly recommend that you check out some of the more details in the paper. All right, so we're close to the end. So I thought I'll conclude with, that's what we're building. I talked about how we're building it, and then some of the con-ups, some of the ways that we think this can play a role. And I'll show you 2 demo videos. One is this checkpoint scenario. So what you see over here is a person interacting with the end system, so the simulation screen over here. And he's being trained for, he's just acting out. But the scenario is that he's being trained for manning a checkpoint. You don't speak the same language. You don't even probably know the right gestures to communicate across the cultural divide. But he will try his best, and then the system might come in to help coach, so to speak. This person over here, steering the view, is an ethnographer who's trying to study the interaction. You won't see our sensing piece that's actually hidden over here. It runs in the background. Hello. Please, may I see your ID? May I see your ID? I need to see your ID.
Is Japan Chinese or
I need to see your ID.
What else can you do besides asking you to see his ID card?
I need to see your ID.
Try asking his friends to explain the situation to him.
One of you explain to him that I need to see his ID. I can't let you in. I can't let you in. Don't you understand?
You must be feeling pretty frustrated. You're going to have to work to remain calm. Take it slow and easy.
I'm sorry. Very concerned about security. I can't let anyone in without an ID. Step over here. Step over here. I'll try to find someone to help out. What is a combination of speech, and gestures, and all of that?
So you're observing this guy, right? The other, there's this. Our power thing is that.
That's not us.
So the main thing is that you're observing, and the system is giving him feedback what to do.
And it is what's driving the behaviors of the characters. So the characters obviously have their beliefs and their intentions, the AI behind what the behavior should be, and of course the whole overall scenario narrative is also playing into them. But they pick them to your cue, right? So the character knows that I'm fighting at something. The character knows that I'm really being agitated, and they respond to you for that. So it's all automated. It's not like anybody's controlling the behavior of the characters.
No, but I mean, so you are taking this observation of this guy, then also using that to animate his characters also, or
Yeah.
so you're doing both. I mean,
Yes. Exactly.
See, the one is that you observe this, you understand what he's doing, or
that give full feedback what to do. But in addition that you take that and then you...
Exactly. So it's both. It's both.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So there's like an overall coach
Yeah.
who's observing both the characters, the vertical character, and you, and that's that's why he was giving you advice that maybe asking something other than the ID. But the characters are responding to you moment by moment by what they understand of what you're doing.
So this avatar thing also you guys do?
No. This is a part of the bigger DARPA program, and we can talk about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Now I've got another video, and this shows you both views. So this is, our view, and this is what the person who is actually interacting sees. Little background, this is a scenario in which you deployed for some whatever work in a foreign country, but you've lost contact with your partner. And so you've come back to the village square to see if you can get some help. You've got a picture of her that you can use to communicate. But you don't speak the same language.
Walk over to the nearest group and show them the picture.
Hello. Okay. All right. So you talk to the side there. All right. Thank you for help. Let me see. We have these guys. I saw them the other day. Hello. Hi. Sorry. I'm looking for my partner. Insert picture. Have you seen this person? She was last seen in the morning somewhere in the square. We've been working in this area for a while. I've not been able to find her. You guys know something? So I'm very concerned about her safety. I don't mean any disrespect, but try to understand that I'm really concerned about her. Have you seen her? Where? There? There she is. Hey! Wow, thank goodness. Wow. Hey, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's go. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Dun. So, all right. So that was, the whole system happening in real time. I don't know if you picked up on some of the cues. Asking for the person, pointing at it, handing out the ID. Mirroring of gestures. I'm bowing, mirror that, and they're picking that up. My tone of speech. The first group of guys were friendlier, but they didn't know much. They just said I could be the guys in the back. I went there, got a little bit too close. He told me to push back, and then I was being very emotional with them. They were picking up on that, and the first time, they're like, hey, what's wrong with this person? But eventually, they got around to understand what I was trying to say, all without speech recognition. I mean, we are doing speech recognition, but it's not being used. In fact, what was it over here? It was not even doing a good job at it. It was just saying thank you, hello. So there you have it. And I guess, what time I should conclude. We've seen a bunch of work that we do, the different technologies that we bring to bear. But I must put in a little caveat, well, more than a caveat. We still have a long ways to go before we can sense human behavior at the fidelity as people do. Right? How do you get to micro expressions and subtle variations in facial features? How do you get to free flow gestures in situ? So it's not in isolation. It could be any gesture. How do you fill in the gaps? The subtle variations, and how do you get to the cognitive and psychological states of people using what you can just sense at a distance? because that's what people do, right? You don't have EEGs on people when you're talking to them. Simulations that people can believe in. Right? So that's something which is very dear to my heart. How do you start engaging yourself that you're immersed and you believe in it? Unless you have that empathy bridge between yourself and the virtual world or the character, I don't know how much learning actually happens. The pedagogy that's being imparted. Does that actually have an impact if you don't actually even believe in it? So augmented reality, mirroring behavior, all of that, I think, are a couple of cool areas to look into. And finally, you got to evaluate the impact of a training tool like this. Is it doing what it's designed to do? So the human factors and the design, I think those are critical. So with that, say thank you very much.